What's up, everybody? My name is Del. This is Del on Movies. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. It's that time when I tell you about everything that I watched in the previous month. However, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm leaving out a bunch of movies because they were all part of martial arts. So all the martial arts movies that I watched during the month of March, I'm going to leave those out of this video and talk about those in a separate video. I talked about the first half of them. I'm going to talk about the rest in another video. So this is all the other movies. These are all the other movies that I did watch during the month of March. So still got a bunch of them. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first non-martial arts movie that I watched in March was Poor Things. So I was catching up on the Oscar nominated films, and of course this was one of them. And this one is Emma Stone starring in the lead role as Bella Baxter. She's a woman who we find out right at the beginning of the movie she committed suicide, and then she was found, and she was pregnant, and the infant survived, and the infant's brain was put into the adult body, and by Godwin Baxter, played by Willem Dafoe, and he raises her from there, and then just life happens to her. She's growing older. I'm not going to get into too much more detail than that. It is a very, very interesting look at a lot of things, womanhood in general, sexuality, the power over that sexuality, and just the power to be a person and make your own choices in all forms, in all aspects of life, I should say. As well as, there's the father-daughter ish relationship, and then eventually we get we find a husband in the deal, and other men who are imprinting upon her pretty much. And it's a really interesting story. I'm not gonna go in-depth analysis for that. I'm gonna send everybody over to Celeste De La Cabra, who did an amazing job analyzing this film and breaking it down and looking at other critics and breaking down their critiques. So outstanding job by Celeste. So go ahead and check that channel out. As for me, just know that I agree with most of what Celeste says, and we're going to call it 4 stars for Poor Things. The next movie is Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, another Oscar type movie. This one I was not quite as enthralled with, where Poor Things I can see honestly moving it up to 4.5, maybe even 5 stars at some point, maybe if I watch it again and think about it some more. This movie, the more I think about it, the score seems to be going down. My initial reaction was that it was probably a 4, and that was much more due to the director's skill, and that director being Martin Scorsese, and in presenting the story and carrying the story forward. And as I get further and further away from it, the more the movie feels told from the wrong point of view. If you're not familiar with the story, and this one, Leonardo DiCaprio is our main character, and he kind of comes into this Native American town that is on a reservation, and these people, the tribe that lives there, they've discovered oil, and they're making lots of money, and of course that brings a lot of attention, mostly from white men who have come into town, and a lot of them marry into the family, and they're basically trying to take over the oil and the money, and treating the natives very poorly, as we know from history, as this does take place, as we see here, in 1920s Oklahoma. So right in the midst of America still performing genocide against Native Americans. So my big issue here, a couple issues. One, like I said, I think it's told from the wrong point of view. I get it, Leonardo DiCaprio is a star, and Scorsese specializes in telling stories from the point of view of volatile men in volatile situations, and that is definitely what this is. But it's a story that demands to be more than that, more than a character examination of him. And yes, I get it, it deals with what's happening, or what happened with Native Americans in the early part of the 20th century, but it does so from a white perspective, which is through Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. We do have Lily Gladstone's character, but it's not told from her perspective at all. She's just kind of in it, and things happen to her, and what she and her people think about it is treated as kind of a I don't want to say afterthought, but it's a little off to the side to the reels to the story that we're presented, and it kind of feeds into that story. Whereas I think it should be more of the central story. Um, and the other part of that is, if you've seen the movie, you know where they twisted American history in a way that a little unsavory for me, in that the American government gets to basically be the hero of the story, and that didn't quite work out for me. So, and I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it for anybody. It is still a very well-made movie. Yes, it's 3.5 hours long. Scorsese's ability to tell stories is on full display here. He does carry this movie. It does not feel as long. It's, in my opinion, a lot better than his last movie, The Irishman, which just kind of dragged on and droned on and on, and people just said it was so great because of Scorsese. This movie really does hold your attention, so I will give it that and stick with my 3.5 stars for Killers of the Flower Moon, but it leaves a lot to be desired. The next movie is a short, and it's Nene and Wei Po. I think that's how you say it. I'm not 100% on that. And here we have two women. They're both grandmothers, and you can see them here. One's Nene and one's Wei Po. I can't remember which is which. I hope that they're in that same order as they're written on the screen. Um, they're basically, if they're best friends, they've grown old together, they live together, and we just kind of watch them and for a little bit. It's not a real in-depth type of thing. I think the whole thing's like 10 minutes long. It's 17 minutes long. So, and it's just the cutest thing you could see. So I think it's on, I want to say it's on Disney. If not, it's on Netflix. It's one of those. 3.5 stars for me. It's just kind of it's a heartwarming deal. Let's just leave it at that. Next movie is another short. This one is an Oscar-nominated short, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. And you see the title character played by Mr. Benedict Cumberbatch. He is a rich man and a doctor, and he meets a character played by Ben Kingsley, or is Ben Kingsley is, no, he's not Howard Sugar. Okay, Henry Sugar, yes, Cumberbatch is. I just had to refresh my memory. Sorry, guys. But anyway, Ben Kingsley's character can see without using his eyes through years of training, is what we're told. The issue that I have with the movie, and I get it's 2.5 stars. The issue that I have with this movie is that it is all telling, not showing, and it is Wes Anderson who directed the short. It is him solely relying on his style to make the story, whereas in his best movies, his style complements the stories that are being told. Here, it's just his style. And we've literally read the story. You know, somebody narrates word for word whatever the source material for this story is, or even if they made it up. I think it was a book, but they just read it. You know, it's like here, da, 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 and they read it, said this and said that, and it wears out its welcome quickly, very quickly. It's a 40-minute film, if I'm not mistaken, 39. So yeah, about 40 minutes. And by minute 10, it's like, okay, are we going to do something different? We got to do something different. So it's basically, you know, things are kind of happening, but it's exactly what we're being read. And we're just literally read word for word for word all the way through this entire 40 minutes. And it was just, it was tedious and a chore to get to. There were some cool visuals to it, which gives it, the matter of fact, you know what, I'm not even going to pretend that I liked it any more than that. Let's go ahead and drop this one down to 2 stars. It just didn't work. Show not tell is good advice for any artist for a reason, because your work is much more powerful if you show it to me rather than just tell it to me. And this movie just told it to me over and over and over, even as it was showing it to me in the background. So instead of adapting the work and then showing it, it's basically pictures to a written work. So it's like the illustration in a book, so to speak. So that, it just didn't work for me for that one. 2 stars for The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Next up on the docket was Wonka, the musical, and I actually enjoyed this. I wasn't sure whether I would or not. The original Willy Wonka, I'm not really a fan of. It's okay. Then the one with Johnny Depp, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I actually like a bit better, but it's not great either. It's okay. So here Wonka, and it's slightly better than okay. I call it pretty good, and I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time on that. It's a musical based on the Wonka becoming Wonka. So before the first movie rather, excuse me, before the Gene Wilder movie. So this is a prequel to that, and yeah, 3.5 for me. Next up is a movie I'm not going to spend a lot more time on right here because I did a whole movie swap on this. This was with Cece Clemens. She was an outstanding guest on Movie Swap early in the month, and she had me watch Resident Evil. So I will suffice it to say that I gave it 3 stars. So I liked it. Pretty decent movie, fun. You can hear all of my thoughts and her thoughts on that movie by checking out that movie swap. And the next movie the next movie that was non-martial arts was this one here, A Single Life. This was a short that I really enjoyed. This whole thing was really a really short, 2 minutes. And we see this young woman right here. She buys a record. She's single. She lives alone, and she buys a record. And when she starts playing it and going back and forth with it, you know, it starts to help her kind of travel backwards and forwards throughout her life, and it's really well done. It's hard to explain. You just kind of have to see it. I can't remember if this was where I found this, but it was one of those, you know, it was Disney, Hulu, Netflix. It was one of those, but A Single Life, 4 stars for me. Super, super short. Next movie up on the docket was Night of Fortune, and this one, as you can see, I gave it 3.5 stars. This is another short. So I watched a few shorts this month. This one, 25 minutes. And we see this gentleman right here. He is, I can't remember if it was his wife. I think it was his wife that passed away. And we meet him. He's in the morgue. And so he's there to identify her body. And he's, you know, kind of out of it. He does it. But then he kind of wanders off and he bumps into another guy, bumps into this guy right here. And he's also lost somebody, and they kind of form a quick little bond, and they wander into somebody else's not funeral, but I guess somebody else identifying anybody. It's an interesting story though to watch and see it all play out. 3.5 stars from me on Night of Fortune. The next film was a full-length feature. This is the other half of my movie swap with Cece Clemens. This was Foxy Brown. 3.5 stars for me. I could always go 4 on this one because let's stop fooling around. Let's just go ahead and make it that 4 stars because it is Foxy Brown. It is iconic Pam Grier, so I'm going to leave it at that. Other than to say, go check out that movie swap again with Cece Clemens. And that brings us to my first theater trip of the month. This was Dune Part 2. I rewatched Dune the previous month, so back in February, and I had seen it the year before. Didn't care for it. It was kind of boring. I liked it better on the second go around. I liked it a lot better, but I still don't love the movie. So then I went to see Dune Part 2, and this is after everybody's telling me how great it is again. And again, I liked the movie. I didn't love the movie. All right, so this is the continuation of the story, and we get to see Timothy Chalamet's character coming into his own, or Atreides, or whatever his name is, and he's more coming into his own. But they have to basically he has to go through a lot of trials and tribulations and help the people on this planet, and he does that, and it's real interesting. And the relationship between his character and Zendaya's character is also really interesting, much more interesting than it is in the first movie because she's barely in that movie. She is a much bigger part of this one, and I thought that was a major strength of the film. It is again, like the first movie, it's a gorgeous looking film. So if you want a visual treat, definitely check it out. I'm not sure if it's still in theaters, but if it is, and you just want that full experience, go ahead. I would highly recommend checking out. But 3.5 stars is where I'm. Again, I don't love it. There's a lot of aspects of it that are good, and then a lot of aspects, again, it just drags on in a lot of spaces. And no, I've never read the novel Dune, so I can't say that. Or maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's a me problem. So, but that's where I am on it. The next movie is Shirley. This is Regina King starring as Shirley Chisholm. If you're not familiar with Shirley Chisholm, so this is a biopic. Shirley Chisholm was the first African American woman to run for president through either of the major parties, Democratic or Republican, in the United States, and she was a viable candidate. She was so definitely the first one to be a viable candidate. This is years before Jesse Jackson did so, about a decade and a half before him. And the story is the real story is really interesting, and the woman is fascinating. But I think they didn't give us the woman. This is my big issue. So it's 3 stars because the story that they tell us is fine. They focus in, they zero in on the campaign, and at that they neglect the rest of her life, so to speak. They kind of throw things in here and there, but we never really get a sense of her and how she's feeling about this. Just judging based on this movie, she's just a cold woman with tunnel vision, just trying to get elected president. And all the most interesting parts of her life are told to us at the very end of the movie in an epitaph. So that was disappointing. Like I said, the story that's here is fine. It's not great. It's solid, but we so focus on the campaign and we don't really get a sense of her, where that would have filled out the movie and made her a fully formed human. Whereas this, she's just a person who ran for president. So it's basically a passage in a history book, in a fifth grade history book, made into a 2-hour movie. It's not really, at the end of the movie, I don't feel like I learned anything more about Shirley Chisholm other than that she ran for president. So it's definitely, if you want someone or to show someone a piece of history, it is important for that, especially if you have younger people, and it's important for that. Though how young is up to you because it is PG-13, and I think it's PG-13, and it's not for the super young. But like I said, it doesn't really teach you anything more other than she ran for president. So 3 stars from me for Shirley. Next film is, here we go, Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. All right, so this movie is, it's interesting because this movie is a revelation and a disappointment all at once. Uh, if you're not familiar, for those not familiar with Freaknik, basically it's a black spring break in Atlanta in the 90s is what it's famous for. Okay, it started off in Atlanta, as by some kids at some of the schools down there, HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, looking for somewhere where kids can go on spring break, because in a lot of places, or a lot of places that kids go on spring break were too far away, cost too much money. So they decided, hey, we're here in Atlanta. We've got all these schools here in Atlanta. Let's just throw a big picnic and have a good time, have some events going on that week. And slowly but surely, it spiraled out of control, and until the entire city was taken over by these kids. And the kids, for the most part, were there to have a good time, for the most part. But you had your unsavory element. You had people who were really going down to prey on the young women that were down there, and that got really out of control. And then that all coincided with Atlanta's political climate changing and things changing that were coming into Atlanta, namely the Olympics in '96 and all other sorts of conventions and things that were coming in that were bringing in much more money than Freaknik was. So Freaknik, being low man on the totem pole, would kind of had to be ousted. And this is the story of that. This is the story of how it started, how it developed, and how it was put down, and if it's coming back. And a lot of people were afraid of what might be exposed during this, and because this was a documentary that was supposed to be out months ago, but a lot of people were kind of pushing back on it. A lot of people who probably did some things in the streets and got caught on camera doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, or are embarrassed that they did now. And But a lot of that is actually not here, so it's not as nearly as raunchy as it could have been. But 3.5 stars for me from for Freaknik. Next is Madam Web. Madam Web is bad, but it's not as bad as I was led to believe. So basically, we have Madam Web played by Dakota Johnson here, and she doesn't realize she has any power. She doesn't until later on, and somebody's after her and these young ladies right here, and she's taking it upon herself to protect these young ladies because of the circumstances that they all found themselves in early in the movie, and the guy is chasing them, yada 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 yada. And yeah, it's a lot of inept story writing here, and just nonsensical things and hammy dialogue that is even too hammy for comic books. And there could be a good movie here. They just failed to pull it out. But I think it's better than Morbius. I think it's better. These are another Sony property, and another Sony property I think is better than Venom Let There Be Carnage. But barely, not by much. So it's not a movie that I like. So as you can see here, 2 stars. It's still pretty bad movie. Just not as bad as some would have you believe. Some are telling it's the worst movie ever made. I don't think it's that. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, not much better. As you can see here, I put 2.5 stars on it. And in this case, we follow I forgot the name of the family. The Spangler family. There we go. So we follow them again. This time they're in New York City. They're in the iconic firehouse, the Ghostbusters firehouse, and new enemies, new ghosts, big bad ghosts is trying to take over things. And we also have our young lady McKenna Grace playing Phoebe, who's I think she's past puberty, so I'm not going to say coming into puberty, but definitely dealing with teenage hormones and angst and all that sort of stuff. And this is a movie that's it's just so crowded. It doesn't know what it wants to be or wants to do with the franchise. It's trying to do a little bit of everything. So we get that coming of age story with Phoebe. Then we get the whole sort of romance, the lukewarm romance with Paul Rudd's character and Carrie Coon's character. So we get that going. Then we get a little bit of with the brothers. We get a little bit of that. Then we get the original Ghostbusters all kind of vying for a little bit of time with Dan Aykroyd's side story, and Ernie Hudson, he's providing the money, and he just keeps popping up, and eventually Bill Murray pops up, and then we got Amy and I forget Amy, the one who plays Amy, but we get the other characters from the original Ghostbusters popping up. It's just too crowded, and it's trying to do too much fan service instead of telling us a really good story. It could pick, if you're going to stick with the family, I personally would have enjoyed it better if it had stuck with the family and just focused on them, not had any of the original Ghostbusters in it. If you have to have Ernie Hudson in it because he provides the money, okay, but keep him on the sideline as much as possible. Dan Aykroyd actually was fun in the movie, but it didn't need to be here. So 2.5 stars for me for a movie that just was unfocused and just never hit its stride. And as some others have complained, there's not much Ghostbusters in the movie either. And some of the decisions characters make are just way out there. Like, they don't make sense at all. 2.5 on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. That was another trip to the theater for me. Next is a rewatch of American Fiction. I still have it at 3.5 stars. I've talked about this movie several times in the past. My wife had not seen it, so I wanted to watch it with her. And still like the movie. It's still got the same flaws that it had before. Still got the same strengths that it has before. So you can go back and check. I believe January. I watched it for the first time in January, so you can check that out. Next movie is Back on the Strip, and this is kind of the Blues Brothers meets Magic Mike, I guess you could say. Um, the dancers are called the Chocolate Chips. You can see that right here. And anyway, what happens is we got this young guy here, and he's a wannabe magician. He's 18, 19 years old, and he wants to be a magician, but he kind of sucks at it. And he is also blessed to be very well endowed, and he gets a job kind of doing magic show at what used to be a male strip club. And so the women are all there thinking he's gonna strip and he's trying to do magic, and yeah, one thing leads to another, and they find out that he's particularly blessed in that area. And it so happens that one of the there's a man in the audience, and he is Wesley Snipes, who used to head up the Chocolate Chips, which was the dance troupe that used to strip there. And he decides, you know what, it's time to put the band together, make the back together, make some more money. So he goes and gets all of his old stripping buddies. He himself can't strip dance anymore because he's got some leg issues. But he goes and gets the rest of the crew. The rest of that crew includes JB Smoove and Faison Love, Bill Bellamy, and Gary Owen. Those are the other dancers in the group. Some of these names here just kind of popping in and out for smaller parts, like Kevin Hart pops in, and Tiffany Haddish has a little bit bigger part. Has a bigger part than Kevin Hart. She's the main character's mom. Um, so it's got its moments. You know, there's some chuckles here and there, but it's pretty rough movie. So 2 stars for Back on the Strip. And next, that brings me to animated, Marvel animated. Usually I'm watching DC animated. This time Marvel. Iron Man and Hulk Heroes United. And this one, it's weird because what I'm gonna say might sound like I should like it a lot more. And the problem with this movie is that it's too much action. So, and you know, I know that's like blasphemous, especially when you're talking about an animated cartoon, right? And for that reason, I get that if you just set kids in front of it who like the Hulk, who like Iron Man, and say, here, check this out, they might fall in love with it because it is so much action. It's wall to wall. The little problem that I'm having with is that it becomes I get desensitized to it really quickly because there's no story to hang on to, and I don't care about Iron Man or the Hulk in this particular adventure. They're just kind of hanging out and fighting everything in sight and bickering back and forth. So that's really it. So after a while it just gets to be boring, even though there's so much action. So 2.5 for me on Iron Man and Hulk Heroes United. Next up is The Man from Nowhere. If you notice, again, just a reminder, I'm skipping some of these because they're martial arts movies and I'm going to talk about those in another video. And The Man from Nowhere is the movie that I watched with Corey from Wookiees Movies and Music on our movie swap. So go ahead and check out that one for my full views on The Man from Nowhere and Corey's views on The Man from Nowhere, and start here with 3.5 stars, so you know that I did like the movie, I did enjoy the movie, and you can hear the pros and cons in that movie swap. And then we got Expendables, or Expendables, or The Affordables, I've heard some people call it. Basically, it's The Expendables Part 4. And in this movie it's just, it's a time passer. It's just, you put it on, it's like, oh, okay, let's let this 2 hours go by. It's, it's a lot of action, that's true, but a lot of the action is not good action. There is an attempt at a story, but it's not really a good attempt at a story. Jason Statham is kind of giving his all. Then there's characters again like like Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, it's just kind of too much happening. Too many characters flying in and vying for time and trying to get a little bit of the spotlight when they, it just works out that none of them get enough, and basically we're left not really caring a whole lot. And then to accommodate everybody getting a little bit of the spotlight, we set Sylvester Stallone on the sideline for the movie, or out of the movie technically, because what happens is that he's killed at the beginning of the movie, and that's what kind of brings the team together to go out on this next mission to get revenge. Never mind that the actual plot is somebody's basically trying to nuke everybody. So but that's secondary to the revenge factor. And I do want to mention 50 Cent here, and the reason is a lot of people that saw the movie before I did, or even saw the trailer, like, oh, 50 Cent was so terrible. I'm gonna argue that he wasn't. There was nothing for him to work with or do, and the same goes not just for him, but for the entire cast. I mean, Statham was given a little bit. Stallone, early on was given some, and then he disappeared. Megan Fox was kind of one note for a while, and she's not giving him enough. Dolph Lundgren, same thing, and Randy Couture. I mean, all these guys just were not given enough. We got Iko Uwais in the movie, and he should be doing more. Tony Jaa pops up, and you just kind of got to go, oh, that's the guy from Ong Bak, and he does a bunch of stuff. And yeah, it's not any one of these guys' fault. It's just a poorly written movie and a poorly thought out plan for the whole thing. So 2.5 for Expendables Part 4. Next is The Last Repair Shop, which is the Oscar-winning short, if I'm not mistaken. Won the short for Best Oscar. Yes, this is a 40-minute movie, The Last Repair Shop. It is about the California school system, or the Los Angeles school system, not California, the Los Angeles school system. They basically repair all the instruments for the school district, and it's just a handful of people working on thousands and thousands of instruments, because Los Angeles is pretty big. As you can see here, more than 80,000 student musical instruments, and it's just a handful of people repairing them, and this is their story. So we get to know them a little bit, and along with them repairing instruments. So it's really not about them repairing instruments, it's about them. The drawback that I have is maybe a me problem again, and that's because I was expecting more about the kids. There are some kids in here, and we do talk about some kids, but I was expecting more about them based on what I knew about it. And so that's probably a me problem. Still an excellent watch and really enjoyable. 4 stars for The Last Repair Shop. So I will say, hey, that Oscar win deserved in my opinion. And that is the last movie that I watched in March that was not a martial arts movie. There you have it. That's all I have for you guys on this March. These are all the movies that I watched that were not martial arts movies. Be on the lookout for the video that has those movies in it. That's coming up soon. As far as these movies, I'm really interested in your thoughts on Poor Things and Killers of the Flower Moon. I didn't want to go too in depth with it because I wanted to keep the video to a decent length, but I do want to hear your thoughts, and we can have a good conversation down in the comment section. So like, subscribe, and yeah, comment so we can talk about it. That's all I have for you on this one, guys. Catch you on the next one. Bye.